Valerie and I are so delighted to welcome you today and to hopefully tempt you with our brand new class, Infant Mental Health and Child Welfare. And so this is a teaser. We hope you will be inspired to take the class. It is free. You get CEUs, and we're just really excited to be here today. I'm Mimi Graham. I direct the FSU Center for Prevention and Early Intervention Policy, and this is my colleague, Valerie.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name is Valeria Dallas, and we're really excited to have so many of you to join us today, as Dr. Graham mentioned, to get the teaser for this beautiful course that Florida State University has developed for everyone. Just to do a brief introduction, I'll just go ahead and introduce myself right quick. Again, my name is Valeria Dallas. I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Florida. I work for Florida State University's Center for Prevention and Early Intervention Policy. I always make the joke that I wear a couple of different head wraps here at the center. And one of them is that I am a child parent psychotherapy clinician and trainer for the state of Florida. And I also have the opportunity to hold a reflective space for many of our CPP clinicians around the state. And I serve as the clinical coordinator for CPP for clinicians around the state. Again, we're really excited. We're talking about a topic that I'm super passionate about, infant mental health. And so, oh my goodness, to condense this in an hour, we can do it, Mimi, we can do it. But we're going to go ahead and share, and hopefully this gets you inspired about how we move this science of infant mental health into the child welfare field.
Thanks, Valerie. So the title of the course is If Babies Could Talk, What Would They Tell Us That They Want? And how do we create a relationship-based, developmentally appropriate, trauma-informed practice for our infants and toddlers in child welfare? So the course consists of 7 modules. It's self-paced, so you can do it at 2 in the morning if you're awake like me, or you can do it at your heart's desire. So we're excited about that. We've tried to make it very interactive. We like to have fun when we're learning. So there's some real cute baby videos like this. We have flip cards that are like playing Jeopardy that are really fun. There's animations that we'll show you later that our colleague created that make it fun. We have fun quizzes and games like this one on developmental milestones. There are a lot of printable handouts and links to resources. So hopefully everything's at your fingertip to make it fun. It's not a boring, self-paced online training like some. So let's get started.
So within this training, there are 7 modules. And so let's go ahead and just talk about in these 7 modules what you will find. The first module gives you an overview of the course and just what to expect, and talking about a relationship based, because you're going to hear this word quite a lot. And if you know me and if you know Dr. Graham, we talk about relationships and just how important they are in the lives of young children. So it talks a little bit about this relationship based approach, developmentally appropriate and trauma informed practice. And we're going to cater this specifically for our friends and our colleagues that are working within child welfare. So giving you a language to understand it, because no matter what your capacity is in child welfare, if you're a case manager or a case manager supervisor serving as a GAL, you don't need to be the expert on these particular topics. But this course is going to help guide you and give you an understanding, so you can understand the meaning as you're sitting in family time meetings, or if you're sitting in court or just having conversations with the caregivers or the parents, to have an understanding as to what all this means. So module 1 will take you through that. So why? And if you want to put your response as to what you think in the chat, feel free to do so. But why does child welfare need an infant mental health approach? So if you have an educated guess, go ahead and drop that in the chat, but we're going to talk about that a little bit further. So there are some myths, and I hope everybody in this virtual room is not holding on to these myths, but there are some myths when it comes to young children who've experienced trauma. And to be involved in the child welfare system, unfortunately, this young child has experienced some type of trauma. So when we're talking about our young children, our children 0 to 3, our children 0 to 5, some of the myths that we've heard that they're too young to remember. Oh my goodness, they're so young, this is not going to emotionally scar them. They're going to be resilient and they're going to bounce back from all of this. So those are some of the myths that we heard. But the science, it kind of tells us something different. I want to know how much do you agree with this statement here? So the victim was shot and killed while she sat in a parked car. Her baby was in the back seat and was completely unharmed. Thankfully, the child is young and the child will be fine. And I hope that's not sitting well with anyone that's in this virtual room, because we know that is not the case.
And sometimes it's years later when the trauma symptoms emerge, like are shown in this scene.
We have the opportunity to do police ride-alongs to a domestic violence situation. And so this was actually the first call I ever rode along. It was dinner time, and they were having spaghetti for dinner. It was dripping down the walls, the kitchen table was overturned, and we had 3 children in the household. Looking at this whole situation at the time, we said, no evidence of physical harm, the kids are fine. We learned differently, of course. The boy in the corner was classic behavior that we see with kids who have had chronic exposure to violence. He would just completely zone out, numb out as things started to get scary. The 6-year-old little girl on the chair blames herself for what's going on, but actually it was 4 years later that we really appreciated who had some of the most profound or severe harm coming out of this situation, and that was the 6-month-old baby who was now 4.5 and had seriously injured another child in preschool.
It's literally the opposite of the way most people think about this. Most people think young children, they don't really understand what's going on and they're resilient. But the fact is, if anybody's impacted more severely, it's the younger child.
So we hope this course will help dispel any myths there are that it doesn't matter, that babies won't remember, or that it doesn't matter.
And so if you don't believe us, right, I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of the work of Dr. Vanderkolk. And just the work about how our body remembers and how trauma keeps its score within our bodies. And we have come to learn this and realize this, and we see it often in very young children too. How oftentimes like their experience and their adverse experiences they've gone through, that it has impact, and we see how it turns up in their behaviors. And so from this study that was done, you know, the ACE study, and I'm hopefully that you guys are sure with that, but this course will take you through it if you haven't learned about ACEs and adverse childhood experiences. When these things are not addressed, we know that it not only has impact on these young children, but these are the things that trickle on into adulthood and that have impact on our health, our physical health, and our mental health into adulthood. And so with ACEs, when they go unresolved, especially in young children, we have seen this trajectory, and the research tells us this trajectory is real and it's true. We know that once these adverse experiences, if they're not addressed, right, and children aren't supported, that it can begin to impact their academic performance, right? It impacts their mental health. It impacts, you know, continued ways they're in relationships and, you know, they're not getting fulfilled in their relationships. And we know that sometimes when we don't know how to cope, right, we turn to substances as a coping mechanism. And it impacts our physical health too, as well, as this ACE study showed us. And with a lot of the youth that we work with, you know, and the young families that we work with in child welfare, we see that how oftentimes, and they're not just involved in child welfare, they're also involved in the criminal justice system too.
And the whole trauma trauma to criminal justice pipeline. So as you all really know, half the kids coming in child welfare are under 5, and the largest single group are babies around their first birthday. That's why we love our baby courts and all the good work that you're doing for our young children. But that's why as case managers, you need to know about young children.
And so I don't know, this is a little bit of a trivia for everyone too, as well, that, that previous slide showed us that 50% of the children coming into child welfare are our young children. And for those, a little bit more trivia for you too, as well, when we think of neglect, right? Oh my goodness, neglect. Like I'm leaving my child unattended, or my mental health is just so overwhelming that I'm not, tending to my child. Neglect is the most prevalent reason. 75% of the young children that come into child welfare, it is because of concerns with neglect. And there are more dire consequences for children's mental health when they have experienced neglect and this neglect is not addressed and not treated. But the reversal of the consequences requires a more than just simply removing a child from, this neglectful situation. That's part of it. That's part of providing safety. But we know that we have to go back and address all those experiences of neglect too, as well.
We see the results too. More than half of the kids entering foster care have some kind of developmental delay or medical problem or other issue that makes it hard to learn. And then most of them age out with some kind of psychiatric diagnosis. So obviously something more is needed to ensure the well-being and mental well-being of our kids.
Mm-hmm. All right, this is another question for you guys to drop your answers in the chat too, as well. Some of you might be, old timers at this, and some of you might be new to the game, but have you ever served a family that included a baby or toddler? And how many are you currently are serving babies and toddlers? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of yeses come through the chat too as well. So you're in the right place. This is a common conversation, common language. All right, so our work, oh my goodness, I know there are a lot of folks in this room who have been through undergrad, grad school, and some who in doctoral programs and all this stuff. We studied all these theories, right? And it was just not for the fun of it. It's been very interesting, right? But these theories, they hold meaning. And you've been able to use the research. Here at Florida State, we're very curious about what is happening in the field and what the scientists are saying. And we've been able to move these theories, right, into practice to see some different trajectories for young children and some different outcomes for their caregivers and for their families. So in this course, you'll learn a little bit more about the science of brain development. We cannot promise that we will make you a neuroscientist, but we're going to give you some foundational knowledge about how young babies' brains develop. We're going to talk about the attachment science, because working with young children, it's all about the relationship. And so we're going to teach you about attachment science. We're also going to teach you about trauma, the trauma theories and the trauma science, and also ACEs too as well. And so what this looks like, all these experiences, all these theories about how to build resiliency within young children and resiliency within families.
And then we're going to link it specifically to child welfare. And how does the attachment science, for example, impact your decisions as you're deciding placement or frequency of visitation, or all those many decisions that you have with young children?
So Mimi, what is infant mental health? I know people get this picture in their mind that this little baby is going to be going through some Freudian style therapy, but what is infant mental health?
Well, the unique thing is that you're focusing simultaneously on the parent's emotional needs and well-being and the child's needs. That's very different than how dependency typically works.
Yes.
And it's all about
the relationships. Exactly, Dawn. It's that relationship-based approach.
But it's not just for the families that we're talking about. You all that work in child welfare, you have vicarious trauma. You're dealing with all these really tough cases. And so this course also addresses how can you as child welfare professionals benefit from a relationship-based, reflective, trauma-informed approach.
Exactly. There is this old adage that we hear all the time in working in this field, that you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? So there's this quote, the expectation that we can be immersed in the suffering and the loss, because this is a lot of complexity working in child welfare. It is not easy, but we are capable of doing it. But there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of of loss on the daily basis. And to not be touched by it would be unrealistic. So this course is going to make sure that we are tuning into you as workers in child welfare, that you are taking care of yourself. We talk about all the time, when you get on an airplane, you hear it all the time, right? Put your oxygen mask on first. To be able to serve these young children and their caregivers and their family, we need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. So this course is going to attain to support you with that too as well.
There are also downloadable handouts for you and for families you serve that will help you address many of these topics.
Mm-hmm.
So how can child welfare benefit from a relationship-based infant mental health approach? And how can your knowledge of the infant mental health science improve each stage of the process, from prevention to removal to case planning to court appearances to visitation to reunification, adoption, or TPR? And how could we maximize the relationships? And how would an infant mental health approach be different than what we're currently doing? So that brings us into module 2, which is an overview of healthy development. So what do you know about development? These are really interactive modules that review the milestones. You certainly don't need to know everything about child development, but knowing some key milestones, like that kids walk around their first birthday, and they should have, the amount of words they should have by age 2. So we utilize the developmental milestones to give you some of those key milestones so that you can look.
Okay, so let's do a little test of knowledge. We're going to look at this little girl. Sidebar, that's my little girl. How old is this little girl? How old do you think she is? She's stacking blocks. Look at that precision. Go, little girl, go. Whoa! Look at that joy and delight that she takes in it. I'm seeing a couple correct answers in there. I saw 9 to 10 months in that chat. She was actually about 10 months during that time too as well. Yes. So some of you guys have a good eye on development. Let's go to the next one, Mimi. How old is this little guy? I see him walking. He's got a good little trot. He's pretty stable, huh?
But he also walks like a drunk sailor. I mean, so it's real clear that he hadn't been walking very long, has it? So what do you think?
I'm seeing a lot of 12 months, 12 to 15 months, 13 months.
He's actually 15 months old, my grandson. So anyway, then we have games like the milestones games. And so the way this works is you drag one of the cards. So it'll say like, I enjoy playing peekaboo with mom. And so you decide, is that a motor or a language domain or a thinking or a feeling? And you get the right answer and it claps for you. And if you get the wrong answer, they very politely ask you to do it again. Then we have these fun games. So, okay, it's a test. So the brain is developed by A, Einstein toys, B, experiences, C, computers, D, relationships, or E, experiences and relationships. What do you think?
I'm seeing a lot of E's coming through the board.
Y'all are so smart.
Yes.
Let's give them another one. The brain is 80% developed by age 25, 21, 18, 12, or 3.
I'm seeing a lot of E's in there. E's.
They're so smart,
Yes.
Valerie.
I know. And for our folks that said maybe 25, that's when that brain is fully developed. Hopefully. Oh my goodness, hopefully by then. But yeah, by 80% of the brain is developed by then.
One more. So which organ is not fully developed at birth? The heart, the lungs, the brain, auditory processing, or all of the above?
Okay, seeing a lot of E's, all the above. C's, seeing some C's.
E is not the right answer. So we use videos to help answer the question. And the brain is the only one that is not fully
One of the
developed.
things that's really important to remember about development of the brain is that, in contrast to every other organ, the brain is not developed at birth. At birth, your heart is fully organized and it is pumping blood and it's doing exactly what it's going to do for the rest of that person's life. And it is just a tiny little version of the big adult heart. That's not the way the brain is.
In order to get your brain to be what it's going to be as an adult, certain sets of experiences need to take place. What parents do for their children early on can have a marked effect on the wiring of a child's brain.
So we've utilized the experts in the field with great videos as well.
Which then takes us to module 3. Module 3 is going to talk about development derailed, right? We're not going to talk about development stopped, development just completely messed up for the rest of this child's life. It's derailed because it is derailed, but there is a possibility, a strong possibility with child welfare workers who are infant mental health informed and trained to get things back on their developmental trajectory. So we're going to talk a little bit about ACEs and the impact of ACEs and the impact of social determinants of health within module 3.
So here's a little test. So, okay, so get your focus on. So we want you to count the number of times the blue stars appear. Okay, ready, set, go.
All right. How many starts? How many times? Drop it in the chat. How many times? How fervently were you guys counting? All right, I'm seeing 17, 16. Okay, you guys got a good eye.
Should we have them watch it again, Valerie?
I want you to watch it one more time, but this time center your focus towards the bottom of that screen and tell me what you see. Aha. So other than the blue star, did you guys see that little creature there that popped up at the bottom? That kitty cat, yes. Was that something you guys saw the first time around? No, yeah, we missed it. So sometimes, you know, yeah, we can see all the chaos, right? All the trauma that is around us, right? All those things, or not necessarily just the chaos that's around us. But with this, just like we're going to try to be observant for the things that we're missing, we're also going to be using this lens, our trauma lens, to catch the things, right? As infant mental health workers that oftentimes that typically people don't see. With these lenses on, with our trauma lenses on, and just being infant mental health informed, we're able to capture those things a little bit differently.
And when we look for trauma signs, we see them, and we can also see the impact of ACEs on the child. And we start wondering, you know, I wonder why he is having these tantrums. I wonder what's going on at home that could be causing this behavior. So we know that the birth to 5 is a critical developmental period for the brain. And we also know about adverse childhood experiences. And then there's also the genetic proclivity that predisposes some people to substance use addictions. And all this interacts as the brain is developed and can be hardwired and manifest in any of these combination of outcomes over the lifestyle. So that's why it's so important to deal with it early and to provide the healing.
And so then that will bring us to module 4 of observations. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm in a Starbucks or here in Tallahassee at my Lucky Goat, that's a coffee shop, when I see a baby walk in with their caregiver, there's an automatic smile on my face, and I'm also watching to see what type of interactions I'm going to see. And most of the time, it's something super positive. But it's going to talk to you about observations. So as a child welfare worker, we could move on to the next one. They're going to give you a couple of tools within these modules that you guys can use, because I can tell you the feeling. Like, I felt super happy this morning when I saw this dad holding his baby, and they were just looking at each other, and that baby was saying something. But I can't really go to a judge and say, oh my gosh, I felt happy inside, you know, when I saw this. The judge is going to want some more description in terms of, what did you see? What was this baby doing? What's this relationship looking like? There are some tools in this module that are going to give you some really great words, some really great language to be able to describe the strengths, because we always want to start off with the strengths, right? As infant mental health workers, they're going to give you some great tools in terms of describing the strengths, the concerns, what we're seeing with the baby, what we're seeing with the caregiver, and also describing what we're seeing with the relationship too as well.
So we'd like you, so those of you that have a first name A to G, we want you to observe the parent, and those that are H to, I don't know, T, do the child, and those of you, the rest of you, observe the relationship. So you may have seen this as one of our favorite ones. Okay.
Did you understand it though? No. Okay. All right. Huh? Oh no, not this one. This is the grand finale of it. Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're gonna do next season because they did some stuff this time. Exactly what I was thinking.
All right. I love it too, Desiree. I love it too. All right. So for those who are watching the dad in this video, what did you notice with dad? Put a good description or just drop it in the chat. He was smiling and he was talking to him. Exactly. He was smiling. Yes. That eye contact. He was so engaged. Exactly. So for those that were watching the baby, what kind of descriptive words or description that you, okay, connected, fully engaged. I'm seeing it all come in. Responsive. Oh, yes. Okay, you guys were catching it. Good stuff. Listening and responding, interacting, responsiveness. Yes, thank you guys. So for those who are watching the relationship, can you go ahead and put some description in there as to what you are seeing in this dad and his son's relationship? You're seeing a bond. Yes, the love. Comfortable, the serve and return. Yes. That's that infant mental health phrase for you. The reciprocity, yes, the security and feeling respected. Exactly. So these modules will continue to help and sharpen and hone into what you guys are seeing with the caregivers, with the child, and be able to better describe what this relationship is doing.
But not all relationships are ideal. And often people say, well, we can't, the babies can't talk. But when we pay attention to the cues, the babies are actually telling us a lot. So as Valerie said, we offer different kinds of tools that help you focus on what's the baby trying to communicate. So this time, choose a different one. Some of you choose to look at the mom, some the child, and some the relationship. And notice how different this is than the previous one.
Play. Hi. You want to play patty cake again next time, huh? You want to play patty cake? No, you want to play with the turkey? Huh? Is that what you want to play with?
So drop in the chat, please. What were you observing with mom? For those who had an eye on mom, what were some of the things that you were observing with mom to describe what you were seeing? No affect, yeah, it seemed kind of a little detached, yes. Mom seemed a little flat, yeah. Yes, not that strong, yeah, forceful play. For those who are watching the baby, this little guy, what were some of the things that you were observing with the baby? He seemed to be a little bit withdrawn, not connected, a little detached too. Yeah, facing the opposite way, not really connected, engaged, or interested. Yes. And so for those that were watching the relationship at this time, what were some of the things that you were observing within the relationship? Strained. Yes. Yeah, no bond, a lack of relationship. Not connected, superficial, yeah. So we know that, we're observing this, but I know back in module 2, we had our trauma lenses on that can give some explanation as to why this relationship is looking the way it is. So like I said, we're going to have our trauma lenses on. We're going to get some words to describe. And then this is going to help us as we move into the future modules too, as well, with some explanation and sharing.
And it gives us information to inform our case planning. You may have suspected that this mom was clinically depressed. And so how do we get her the kind of supports that she needs and that could really guide an appropriate intervention? So not every family is getting the same thing. They're really getting what they need to be successful.
So that brings us to module 5, like a lot of the meat and potatoes that a lot of our child welfare colleagues are responsible for, right? The placements, the transitions. Some of you want to talk a little bit about that?
So this is one of the areas where we really need to be guided by the science. If you know about child development, for example, you know that stranger anxiety happens around 9 to 18 months. So it's probably the worst time to separate a child from their attached familiar caregivers, and yet it happens all the time. So if it must happen, then how do we make those transitions? How do we do them gradual? How do we do them with a secure base at the transition so that there's less trauma? So this section really takes the science and applies it into those really complex decisions that you need to make. And one of them is about the resilient science. This section really talks about relationships and how healthy attachments are really the cornerstone for children getting through and buffering the adversity that they're feeling. And we know that attachment doesn't just happen. It is a process that is the accumulation of changing the diapers and feeding the baby and the serve and return interactions. And so our foster parents are creating those attachments while their parents are somewhere else. So we need to be very respectful about those relationships and attachment, and know that separation from those key relationships is really traumatic, and it's especially traumatic during those key developmental times. So this section really addresses those with a handout that talks about attachment considerations. What is the age of the child? What is the attachment relationship? This is one of the reasons we like children to come to court, because you can see who the child goes to when they need something or when they're distressed. How much time have they had in placement? So going through these considerations when you're considering any kind of changes.
And the thing I like about these this course too as well is that it talks about, I mean, it's a ton of information, right? But these handouts and these acronyms really help you in supporting it, because as caseworkers, as guardian ad litems, as case, managers, supervisors, we are not in this alone. This is a team collaboration. This is an opportunity for us to consider what is going to be best for this young child, what is going to be best for these caregivers, what is going to be the best for the relationship. So they offer these little tools, like when the conversation gets a little heated or the conversation seems like it's going nowhere, how can we hone back in to figure out what is going to be best in terms of our considerations for this family?
And one of the ways that we are teaching this is through case studies. And we're able to make this animation about Corey. So we'd like to just tease you with a little bit of Corey's story here. So then we offer an alternative story that would be an infant mental health approach. So we'll just show you the first part of it.
Yeah, and so we can just pause it right there, Mimi, because we're not going to give them all the goodies, right now. But even with this, watching even the animation, it brought back some stories of some old cases. And just, as we continue to understand infant mental health and understand the science a little bit more, we can be way more super intentional about how we're supporting, the youngest babies that are coming in through our child welfare system. But just at the very beginning, for all our case managers in the room, go ahead and put a yes, I'm a case manager down here if you're a case manager in the chat. Just even beginning with these very simple considerations. And the alternative Corey story is going to take us down this pathway of some additional considerations that we really just need to be thinking about with young children. So thank you for all the case managers that are in the room too as well.
I'll give them just a few.
Indeed it is, Karen. It is so important. And this brings us to our next, topic that we want to talk about, just in terms of the tools that are going to be provided. So it talks about tips and plans for transitioning infants and toddlers. And we know sometimes we like to be super intentional, but sometimes things happen. But the tools that are in here, these are by professionals that were developed after years and years of working in this field. They came up with some considerations that we really need to have. So this course is going to walk you through in terms of some of the considerations and just some tips and planning for working with young children if we have to make transitions while they're in care.
The next module is about case planning, and this explores three aspects: concurrent planning, which we know is a challenge sometimes, family time visitation, and services. And so it really helps develop those case plans that are really in the best interest of the babies that are in the system. And so we created a video that shows an infant mental health approach that makes family time visits more meaningful. We'll show you.
I have to give a thank you to our friends at the Irvin Harris Professional Development Network. These are leading folks in the field of infant mental health and just emerging leaders who are really excited about infant mental health. They have created some great tools that are going to be found in this course. Tools for parents, for bio parents who this is all new. It's a little bit scary, but giving them some resources for them to help support them during their family time. There are resources for our caregivers, our foster parents too, as well, how to support family time. There are resources for us as child welfare workers, right? In terms of how can we support family time, what to expect, what to know, how to encourage those bio parents and how to encourage those, other caregivers who are participating in the family time. And not only that, we try to touch everybody in the child welfare system. There's some tips for our judges, and I know there are a couple that have joined us today, for attorneys and for supervisors, how to make this time super meaningful for everyone that is involved. And also giving props to the Irvin Harris Professional Development Network. They created a set of tools which are called the Diversity Informed Tenets for work with for infants, children, and families. These tenets allow us as child welfare workers to take in some very special considerations for our families. We know there's been a really big disruption, but to focus in and to hone on for them what is important culturally, religiously, spiritually for their family and for their young child is something that we can do as those who work in child welfare too as well. So the link for the tenants will be there just to help support attuning to what the family really feels is important to them. And so again, we have some quizzes for you guys. Now, I want to tell you something. This is not a test that's going to be graded. Have fun with it. Test your knowledge with these Jeopardy style questions. And just to see, how much you've been paying attention or what more you want to learn or what sparks your curiosity. There are some different ways that, you can test your knowledge on all the things that this course is going to take you through in terms of learning.
And then the last module is bridging the gap between the science and practice. Sometimes there's a big gap, but we give a lot of takeaways about how can we change our child welfare practice to be more relationship based, and how can it be more attuned to the milestones and developmentally appropriate to the age of the child, and how can we avoid re-traumatizing children? How can we reduce the stress even if we have to remove children for their homes? I love this one quote that maltreated children don't have behavior problems that need to be addressed. They have extreme survival skills that need to be understood. So a trauma approach helps us look at those challenging behaviors and wonder what's going on at the root cause so we can be more effective in our treatment. And how do we stop the whole intergenerational transmission of trauma into our families, so that we know we can't go back and change the beginning of what happened to our families, but we can start where we are and change the ending, like this ad that Nadine Burke Harris and her team put together.
When I was a kid, I used to think, if I could just grow up, if I could just get through, I could leave all this behind. But that's not how it works. Everything that happened, it's still part of me. But there's hope. I learned how to heal from toxic stress and make sure the cycle ends with me.
Learn how you can heal and how to protect your kids at stresshealth.org.
So if babies could talk, what would they say? Drop it in the chat. If babies could talk, what could they say? What would they say? It's all about, and they would say it's all about the relationship. Yeah, love me. More cuddles, I need you. And they need to do all these things within the context of a healthy relationship. Yeah.
So we're really excited to share this class with you and hope that you'll enjoy it too.